He seems to think I am being controlling. I would like honest opinions. Additionally, he mentioned that you all need to know he has only done it 3 times since we have lived here for 3 months. He then got annoyed that I posted it, as I showed him the responses indicating that I am not unreasonable in my request, and he urinated in front of the house again. Story 1. This reminds me of when I was a child. I wrote my name in the snow in front of the house, just as my father drove up the driveway. Did you do that? No. But it's your name, and it's in your handwriting. Story 2. As a man, do I urinate in front of the house? No, I prefer to go down the back fence, the side fence, or wait for it. A toilet. Urinating in front of my house for everyone to see is a definite no for me. Story 3. He has only done it 3 times and has lived in the house for 3 months. So he urinates once a month on average in front of your house? Are you really having to have this conversation with a fully grown adult man? Seriously? Does he eat his dinner in the bathroom? Story 4. I wouldn't worry about this on the surface, but what concerns me is the editing. The fact that you had a conversation about it and he repeated this behavior indicates he doesn't respect you or care about your feelings. It's entirely about control at this point. Ignoring him may be the best option. Additionally, depending on your housing situation and where you live, this could potentially land him on the sex offenders register. Is that worth it? Story 5. Some states consider outdoor urination to be indecent exposure, which can result in being placed on the sex offender registry. Story 6. He then got annoyed when I posted it. I showed him responses that proved I am reasonable in my requests, and he urinated in front of the house again. A rude person who has made the front of the house smell unpleasant. What a person. Story 7. Not unreasonable. Legally, if someone sees him do that, he could be charged with indecent exposure, and if convicted, he faces the risk of being included in the sex offenders registry. Since that lasts a lifetime, it can influence where he can or cannot move to, so it is not advisable to engage in such behavior. Remember what Rush Limbaugh said about liberals and the court of public opinion. Sometimes it's not the validity of the charges based on evidence, but the severity of the charges that counts. Story 8. Does he have a problem with indoor plumbing? Or is he one of those individuals who prefers to urinate outside? Story 9. How big is your yard that he can't walk to the toilet? For an adult, urinating outside stopped being acceptable after college, except in very limited circumstances. This isn't one of them. To answer your question, no, you are not being unreasonable. Story 10. So what other red flags does he have that get followed up with? But he's great or the best? It's disrespectful to you, your home, and your neighborhood depending on its density. Service workers arriving at your house will smell that, and it absolutely reeks when men decide to behave this way. I am unfortunately related to multiple men who act like this, and they are the most trashy and mentally unwell people I know. Story 11. He is at your house where presumably you have a bathroom. Why is he urinating outside at all? I would be very upset if my husband relieved himself anywhere in the garden, just a few feet from a functioning toilet. To be fair, we probably wouldn't have made it down the aisle if these were things he considered acceptable as an adult. Story 12. Should he be in front where people can see him? No, it's better to go in the back next to the tree. While I have no issue with him peeing outside, it's one of the fun things we get to do as guys. But the back is better so that people don't see. If someone catches you peeing in public, you could end up on the sex offender registry. So it's best to do it in the woods when no one is around or possibly in the backyard if it's fenced in. Story 13. Yes, that is completely reasonable. I generally like to urinate off the deck into the flowers to give them some water. Story 14. Well, I wouldn't say unreasonable, but it's certainly unproductive. I think you should try positive reinforcement first. Praise your husband and give him a treat, like a piece of cheese, every time he uses the approved place for toileting. Remember, reinforcement has to be given immediately to be effective. If he attempts to toilet at the front of the house, you can quickly redirect him to the appropriate place without scolding, as this might lead to him sneaking away to relieve himself in hidden spots, like behind the couch. Of course, until your husband is trained, you should keep him on a leash at all times when he's not crated. If he isn't crate trained, I suggest starting now. A crate can be a safe space and discourage destructive behaviors. You'll need it for future veterinary visits for checkups and vaccinations. You didn't mention his age. Is he old enough to hold his urine? Are you planning to neuter him? If he was housebroken before, you should address any medical causes before progressing with training. While I'm not an advocate for aversive techniques since they can cause harm when used inappropriately, a firm correction might be the right tool in certain situations. But anyway, I'm not an expert. Be patient, and good luck. With enough training, you could even get him to flush the toilet after he goes. Teach him the basic touch and paw commands, then target the flush lever. Story 15. Well, if you are indeed in Oklahoma and living in a rural area, I'm sorry to tell you that you are not winning this fight. Wife of the porch urinator. Story 16. Given the lack of responses here, I'm guessing she got what she wanted and isn't coming back. That said, I will urinate outside if I'm working outdoors, such as landscaping, and I'm somewhat dirty. If I'm in my shop and it's far from the house, I'm usually quite dusty there. Urinating in front of the house is unusual. The back or side yard would be more acceptable. Also, where we walk, as in not even behind a bush or in the grass. That's really surprising. Story 17. He then got annoyed that I posted it. I showed him responses that prove I am not unreasonable in asking, and he urinated in front of the house again. An absolute legend. He is operating on levels we cannot comprehend. Story 18. Growing up, at parties we would often use a back corner as a restroom. Eventually, I bought my own house and created a designated area behind my shed. I dug a hole about 2 feet in diameter, added a layer of drainage rocks, and that was it. People can use this area, and it keeps everything contained. The next day, I can simply run a hose over it for a minute, and the smell is gone. Story 19. Does he have all his chromosomes? Does he identify as a feral pig? Was he never toilet trained or house trained? Does he know how to use eating utensils? Was he raised by wolves? Is he marking his territory in your neighbor's yard? Has he never seen indoor plumbing? Does he relieve himself on the front porch as well? Would he mind if you used his truck? Would he be able to tell? Inquiring minds want to know. Story 20. In high school, I would urinate outside at night around the house before coming inside. I never had issues, but one time my mom asked me if I had urinated near the garden, and I said yes. She could smell it as it fermented. Urinating on a walkway could be worse in terms of odor. Story 21. It's the first step of house training, and it's one of the hardest. But don't worry, it gets easier with time. Once you've successfully trained him to use the side of the house rather than the front, you can use positive reinforcement to bring him indoors to a designated toileting area, usually the bathroom, and reward him each time he successfully toilets inside. There will be some accidents and mistakes, but keep at it. In the end, you'll have a completely house-trained companion. Story 22. My stepfather used to urinate in the morning on the rose bush in front of the house, completely naked. He eventually stopped after my mother asked him a couple of times, but they never argued about it. It was something he had done for years before they met. Story 23. I don't understand why it has taken 3 months and you still don't have your bathroom repaired. If you have a fundraising campaign, I will donate. Story 24. There is so much wrong with this post. On one hand, you have an open relationship where you clearly communicate and share your worries. You have respect for each other's feelings and needs, but both of your moral compasses are so far from what I would call normal, which leads me to conclude that you are soulmates, a match made in heaven. Story 25. Urinating outside can be one of the enjoyable aspects of having a penis, and I would never want to take away that joy from anyone. However, it's important to be considerate of others. It's best to avoid urinating in front of the house where others can see you. The wife is being reasonable by simply asking her husband to use the side yard. Additionally, he should ensure that he cleans the area periodically. Story 26. I'm honestly a little confused why your solution is to act like a wild animal on the side of the house. How does that solve the problem of your husband refusing to use the toilet? Story 27. Your husband is not a good person and makes me feel better about myself. Who doesn't just go into their house to use the restroom? Story 28. It is reasonable to tell him to stop behaving foolishly and to use the restroom like a human being because his actions are inappropriate. The fact that you both managed to argue about this for an hour is concerning. I would introduce him to friends as, "This is my dear husband who enjoys watering the begonias once a month." Story 29. What a baby. Grow up, my friend. I understand why he does it. When I go hiking or camping, I enjoy relieving myself in the forest. But the front of the house? Is he standing out there like the king of the hill, drinking beer all day, and he simply can't make it to the side? Story 30. I mean, if you are in the middle of nowhere, it is not that big a deal. If you are in the suburbs, he should be urinating indoors or inside a fenced space. Story 31. I have 4 bathrooms. I sometimes go outside to use the restroom, but I never do so in the front of the house. Story 32. We need context. Is your husband a dog or any other animal that cannot use a toilet? Is he from the Middle Ages and accustomed to urinating in the streets? Is he from a remote tribe and does not understand the concept of a toilet? Why are we even discussing this? Story 33. I doubt he thinks you are being controlling because of this one question, and it has nothing to do with anything else. Story 34. I had to read your question twice. No, I don't think it's reasonable to ask your husband to urinate on the side of the house. He should use the toilet instead. Story 35. A better question is why you don't find him urinating in public acceptable. It's perfectly normal. Next time you walk together in the front garden, squat down and say, "Just a moment, sweetheart. I need to relieve myself in front of our neighbors. Don't mind me." If he has an issue with it, consider ending the relationship. Story 36. I suggest using a training collar. You can teach him quickly not to urinate in front of the house. Wait, did you say husband? Story 37. Inform him that with the upgrade from the rundown trailer without working plumbing and a broken toilet in the Ozarks to an actual house with functioning plumbing, he needs to learn how to use the toilet consistently, aiming accurately, knowing how to flush in a timely manner, and ensuring to wash his hands. This is generally considered being civilized. Story 38. Are you playing husband and wife, or are you really adults? I only ask because this post is quite unreasonable. Story 39. I come from a rural town and probably use the outdoors as a restroom half the time, depending on the weather. However, when I did, it was behind the house or on the side where I still had privacy. Story 40. He also mentioned that you all need to know he has only done it 3 times. We have lived here for 3 months for context. He then got annoyed that I posted it, showing him responses that indicated I am reasonable in asking. He later urinated in front of the house again. Story 41. You are married to an animal. I recommend a leash and scolding because he sounds wild. Please do not urinate in the house. Story 42. Many people have issues with urinating outside. It's one of the best parts of being a man. I enjoy going outside at night to look at the moon and stars while I relieve myself. I also listen to the birds in the night. I live in the countryside, though. Story 43. I wouldn't let pets or birds do that in my house, but I wouldn't stop other people from doing it in their own homes. Story 44. It sounds like he needs to be housebroken. I am confused by this question. Do you not have a bathroom? Are you writing from India where people go wherever? If he cannot make it to the bathroom, then I think you have bigger issues than where he is going. I would focus first on why he is going outside. Story 45. There is something pleasant about urinating outside in your own yard, but it is best to do so in the backyard. Story 46. As long as it is in a bush and away from habitation at a decent distance so it is not smelly, I would say go for it. Story 47. Do people want to enter through your bathroom? Shut the bathroom door if you think it smells that bad. Yes, it is controlling. Story 48. He should use the toilet. If he keeps urinating, it will start to smell bad around the house, especially if you live in a place that doesn't get much rain. Story 49. I say let him be great, and he will learn when he ends up on that special list for people who expose themselves. Story 50. He is wrong, but going to an outside source and then bringing that to his attention feels like a petty way to approach the situation. Story 51. Peeing outdoors can lead to being classified as a convicted sex offender. Regardless of where you relieve yourself, consider who may be observing. A young child and their parent witnessing the act could result in serious consequences, potentially requiring registration as a sex offender. There is nothing quite like receiving a safety alert indicating a registered sex offender is nearby. Story 52. I often urinate outside as much as possible. Besides the natural aspect of peeing among the trees, I'm returning important nutrients to the soil. However, stale urine has an undeniably unpleasant odor, and who wants to bring that inside? Your request is completely reasonable. If you simply wanted one designated spot in the yard for no particular reason, that would be acceptable too. You're not making a significant demand on his time and effort. Just find a discreet place. Marriage is about two people doing little things for each other to foster happiness. Story 53. He is just marking his territory. I would say if his chosen spot doesn't have any odor, especially after it rains, then perhaps let him be. My own view is that your request doesn't seem unreasonable. You didn't try to control his habit, you simply asked him to accommodate your needs. Nevertheless, how big of a deal is it? You could just let it slide. Story 54. Unless the toilet is occupied and it will be over 30 minutes, I don't understand it. As a man, the only times I have urinated outside the house is when I do not have access to a bathroom or it is an emergency. For example, when I take my dog outside and I need to relieve myself, I will urinate in the backyard while he explores. Story 55. Yes, make him go outside to pee. I didn't even read this, but yes, all men should urinate outdoors. Thank you for listening to my talk. Story 56. Your husband clearly has issues if he thinks it is okay to urinate in front of your house. Or he is just too lazy to do what normal people do and use the bathroom in his home. Story 57. Or you could raise your standards and expect him to use the actual toilet. Honestly, the things I read in this community really make me realize how low some people's standards are. Story 58. Toilet. Why not use the toilet? If you have to relieve yourself outside, it's best to do so in a more open area than in a narrow corridor. The walls on the side of the house might trap the smell on warmer days. Story 59. There's a spot behind a bush, well off to the side of the porch and hidden from the road, where I have stepped behind the bush and urinated 3 times in the last 3 months. The first time was because our daughter was already loaded in the car, and I urgently needed to relieve myself. The second time was about a month later while we were doing yard work, and I didn't want to walk inside, take off my shoes, and use the bathroom before coming back out. Tonight, while we were both outside chatting, I had to pee urgently, so I stepped over to the bush and relieved myself. It isn't a habit, and I don't plan on doing it again anytime soon or for fun. I prefer using toilets. Very rarely, once in a blue moon, I urinate outside for no specific reason. My wife had an issue with it tonight and joked that others would take her side. I'm not looking for a therapy session, but since we're both online, I felt it was worth sharing my perspective. Hello, honey. Story 60. For everyone wondering why I had to do this, it is usually when my spouse or one of the children has been in the bath for 3 hours and locked the door. Story 61. Does he understand why humans invented plumbing? If he likes the exterior of your home smelling of urine, I guess you should continue. Story 62. The fact that he peed in front of the house again is spiteful and immature. He clearly can't stand to be proven wrong. Stand your ground, girl. Don't let him invalidate your feelings. Story 63. He should use the toilet. Are you being controlling? Is he behaving like a dog marking his territory? Based on the edit, your husband is acting poorly. Story 64. Showcase it. Place an old toilet outside in the front for him to use and connect it to a water line so when he flushes, everyone nearby will hear it. However, it is likely that he is not into flushing either. Why is he even doing this? Does he not have any decency? Does he just enjoy urinating on his shoes? Is he too lazy or too inebriated to walk inside and use the bathroom as intended? Does he not realize that urinating in public is illegal nearly everywhere? If it is not cleaned up, it can create a smell and harm plants. It is similar to a dog urinating on a nice green lawn, destroying the grass in certain areas. There is no reason to engage in this behavior at all, even once a month. Story 65. He is behaving childishly and doing it deliberately as a way of expressing defiance. I have a female coworker I have known for years who shared that her ex used to exhibit similar disrespectful behaviors. This individual is metaphorically marking his territory to assert dominance. Such behavior reflects how emotionally immature men try to exert control. Only a poorly raised and emotionally and mentally unintelligent person behaves in such a foolish manner. I would bet he drinks excessively and is generally untidy. Story 66. As a man, it is your right and God-given ability to express yourself freely wherever you are. Story 67. It sounds like a territory-marking issue. Remind him that he needs to mark the sides as well. Otherwise, the area won't be outlined. Story 68. One bathroom house, two fussy teenagers, a wife, an elderly man with a weak bladder, and 3 cups of coffee often means I have to go to the bathroom behind the shed. Let him buy a shed, then. Story 69. Without seeing the location, it's hard to have an opinion. However, let him go where he feels comfortable. He may need to mark his territory, or perhaps he has a past experience influencing his behavior. If he isn't causing a disturbance or doing anything illegal, then it shouldn't be a concern. However, providing him with plastic bags to clean up after himself is important, as leaving waste in the yard is unacceptable. Story 70. Hubby better hope that wifey is not knowledgeable about ungrounded low-voltage lights located too close to the area of P placement. It could cause a shocking realization for hubby if wifey were to briefly energize the lights at an inopportune moment of evacuation. Story 71. It might be time to either accept that you married a person with limited capabilities or find someone more capable. Continuing this debate is unlikely to yield any positive results. Good luck. Story 72. Does he drink a lot of alcohol? Is he incontinent? Does he need to see a doctor? I would never be okay with my husband urinating in our house. That is unacceptable. Story 73. What is wrong with urinating in the sink? Seriously, he should not be exposing himself in the front yard for everyone to see. Story 74. Is he urinating on the walkway? If so, it's understandable that you might not like that. If he's just urinating in the grass or garden, then you might be overreacting. This is the outdoors and everything is likely covered in bird and animal waste. Your husband's urine is probably the least of your concerns. Story 75. People like your husband are the reason I would actually consider a homeowners association. I would say no one wants to see his genitals, but it would have to make it past the zipper for it to be considered exposure. Story 76. Does he have a reason for not walking inside like a normal person? His behavior suggests he does not care about you or your opinion, which indicates that this is not a healthy relationship. Story 77. Personally, I prefer using the kitchen sink, so I can't relate to your husband. However, you might consider marking the front of your house to establish your territory. This could potentially encourage your husband to choose a different spot. Story 78. It seems like something one should consider on their own without needing to be told. It is not controlling and makes sense. I understand why he might be upset that you posted this about him. It is odd that he jumps to the thought of being controlled due to a reasonable request. Story 79. It's reasonable to ask. It's also reasonable for him to refuse. In the grand scheme of things, it probably isn't a big deal. Story 80. Why are people responding to this person? Why do you need random strangers to answer this? Why did you initially present the question in such an insincere manner? Story 81. Do you know if you could just take your shoes off before walking inside the house? This would not be an issue at all. Story 82. People urinate outside? Is this common? I don't think I've ever urinated in my yard. Maybe after drinking late at night or something. But I don't believe I've ever done this. Story 83. I often find it amusing how much space I have on my property. With over 5 acres, there are plenty of places to go. I probably spend more time outdoors than indoors. Before I retired early, I mostly used the outdoors at work. There was no way I was going to make the long walk to the bathroom every time I needed to go. Unlike some others, I didn't care what people thought about my choices. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.